watching anyone's version, there's always trepidation.
I think things just become difficult when you start talking about ambition and what you want.
We're watching the first Alien. It was pure horror, true horror.
I'm not playing around, there's something in the water.
What do you mean there's something in the water?
There's just something in the fucking water.
Leading up to the release of Alien Covenant in 2017, Ridley Scott suggested that he was going to start a whole new anthology of prequel films, saying, if you really want a franchise, I can keep cranking it out for another 6. I'm not going to close it down again. No way. With the series leading back up to the first Alien and a potential reappearance of Ripley, he would argue, there's a platform for what we're doing right now. It'll be Prometheus, Covenant 1, and Covenant 2. Then we'll probably come in the back end of Alien 1, and that's already kind of been worked out. Covenant 2 is already being written by John Logan, and we're heading toward the back end of the first Alien, so using CG may be feasible. Ripley's going to be somebody's daughter, obviously. But when Alien Covenant released, plans changed. The film was a financial disappointment, and although 20th Century Fox CEO initially pledged her trust in Ridley to know the right story, shortly after rumors emerged that Fox had canceled the rest of the planned films. In October, Scott seemed to continue to suggest that he had plans ironed out for the next film, saying in a podcast with director Denis Villeneuve in October 2017, I think the evolution of the alien himself is nearly over, but what I was trying to do was transcend and move to another story, which would be taken over by AIs. The world that the AI might create as a leader if he finds himself on a new planet. We actually have quite a big layout for the next one. For the next couple of years, though, there would be little mention of another Alien film, and in March 2019, Disney bought Fox.
That breaking news, the blockbuster Disney deal, the parent company of ABC buying many of the assets of 21st Century Fox, creating an entertainment giant.
Even with Disney taking over Fox, executive Emma Watts pledged that the company would do our part and continue to create new stories, mentioning Alien as one of the franchises they had in mind. Ridley reacted by saying Disney would be crazy if they didn't do something with Alien, and by May, it was reported that Ridley Scott was writing a sequel to Covenant. In September 2020, Ridley would give more information on the project, admitting it was doubtful that they would be returning to the approach of Prometheus and Covenant. We went down a route to try and reinvent the wheel with Prometheus and Covenant. Whether or not we go directly back to that is doubtful, because Prometheus woke it up very well. But you're asking fundamental questions like, has the alien himself, the facehugger, the chestburster, have they all run out of steam? Do you have to rethink the whole bloody thing and simply use the word to franchise? That's always the fundamental question. But after this, things went quiet yet again. Disney would approach Scott to direct a different film outside of the Alien franchise, which Scott rejected, saying, they wanted me to do a wizard film, and I don't do wizard films. It wasn't a good idea. Which kind of makes you wonder if he was talking about Doctor Strange. Another Alien project, headed by Neil Blomkamp, emerged and fizzled out. It seemed Disney wanted a fresh mind to tackle the series from this point out. By 2022, the prequel franchise seemed to have completely stalled, even if Ridley Scott still has an untitled Alien prequel film listed on his IMDb page that you can go and see still today. In the meantime, though, Ridley Scott had heard an idea pitched by another director, Fede Alvarez. He's a director with horror in his blood, having Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre under his belt, as well as the Don't Breathe series, The Girl in the Spider's Web, and several short film and TV productions. Alvarez, being a rabid fan of the Alien franchise, had pitched Ridley Scott years ago on an idea for an Alien film, which seems like it was just kind of like a casual pitch to Ridley when they met at some point, nothing really that serious. But that idea seemed to stick in Ridley Scott's brain, who would call Alvarez up out of nowhere and ask if he was still up to make an Alien film based on that idea. In March 2022, he was attached to write and direct a film for the series by 20th Century, reportedly being chosen for the project purely off the strength of his pitch. Although the film was initially reported to be unconnected with the rest of the franchise, it was later revealed to be set between the original Alien and Aliens.
It takes place 20 years after the original movie, so that's roughly 20 years before the second movie. It's about just a bunch of kids, very young kids, late teens, early 20s. that lives in this colony in the middle of nowhere. It's a mining colony where there's nothing for them, or like either you're a miner or you're a farmer, and that's all you get.
The film was officially announced in March 2023, and they would begin filming the same month. Originally, it was reported that Disney wanted the film to be made for Hulu, but would switch to it being theatrical right before they started filming, perhaps again on the strength of the story. The director was keen on going back to the roots of the franchise and, in a sense, trying to recreate the magic of the first film, which, to be honest, is a little bit ironic considering who bought 20th Century Fox. Disney. And we have seen how they've tried to recapture the magic of many properties they have bought over the years, like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and others. I don't think that necessarily says anything about this film in particular. It has already garnered early praise, but it is something to note, at the very least, for this production. Camera started rolling on March 9th, 2023 in Budapest, as it was time to get things going for Alien Romulus. While the production of this film had its parallels to Ridley Scott's later Alien-related movies, the approach to the digital and visual effects was a bit different to what Ridley Scott did for Prometheus and Alien Covenant. The trailers seemed to include many more practical monster effects than Prometheus and Covenant had on display years ago.
It's a future from the 80s that we just are leaning back into and not creating, a new genre or anything. So we are staying within that world of, was it futuristic then? Probably. As you watch it now, does it seem futuristic? Not necessarily. But we want to just make sure that the feeling of what we are doing stays right in that pocket.
No doubt Romulus made use of a bunch of CGI and visual effects. Someone had to do the rig removal, and certain scenes, of course, required computer-generated assistance. The film didn't need to do everything by the book of the first Alien production, but that being said, the plan was to not overindulge in the world of CGI as much as they could.
I mean, the vibe and the feel of the movie seems like it's more like the original, the first movie. The mood and the sets are so beautiful, and the way they're lighting everything, I think it's really promising, and it could be a good match for that first film.
Fede Alvarez was determined to get the creatures on camera practically, so he would hire experts that had prior work experience in making xenomorphs, hiring a crew of prop masters and special effects specialists that worked on James Cameron's Aliens.
The best part was that all these guys, they worked together and they made aliens together, but then they grew up and they went different ways. They create their own shops and they make this movie separately, and my dream was to bring them all back together on one set and get them to work together. And sometimes you just give one of these companies everything, but I wanted to give each one of these things to one different company so I could see them all together, working together. And the chest burster was that scene where, because we didn't have enough hands, Alec was there working with the chest burster, and I got Shane, his old buddy from the Aliens, to go, okay, I'll help you out, and jumping in, and all of them, all hands on deck, working together. And it was really one of my favorite days on set to see all those guys like collaborating again on an Alien movie.
This can be easily seen in the trailer footage we got so far of the creatures interacting on screen. The digital is harder to distinguish from the practical, and while certain details like muscle spasms and impossible anatomy isn't achievable practically, what we do get to see of the xenomorphs and face huggers in the trailers feels believable, for the most part. Of course, an Alien film is nothing without its incredible sets, and Alvarez would again ensure that they kept that amazing part of the franchise production history alive and well for Romulus.
Fede is like James Gunn or Guillermo del Toro in terms of modern directors, in which they want some practical elements on set to interact with. And Fede has been very adamant about doing as much in camera as possible. The sets are inclusive. They have ceilings. They have active doors. They've got active lights.
They would also bring back some of the recent ideations from the Alien series that we saw in Prometheus and in Covenant, with a built ship and cockpit with hydraulics to move it around.
The Corbelan set, the cockpit, was unbelievable to be in, and it's built on a gimbal. So we actually got to feel what it was like to take off and to be in turbulence, and these sets really help with the acting because you're really just reacting to what is in front of you, and they're absolutely incredible and massive and so immersive.
There also is Alvarez's aversion to making heavy use of green screen technology, instead opting to build all of his sets and putting the puppets and animatronics in front of real actors, which pays off for this movie and is inspired by the original entries into the series, with bright orange panic lights flooding the bowels of the spaceship, panicked faces, and the images, of course, of its deadly invaders.
It really feels like we've traveled through time, and I'm getting to experience like the first time being on a movie set where they use pretty much all practical effects, but we get all the perks of a modern day filming experience.
They would also decide to shoot this entire film chronologically, which some of the actors in particular liked, saying, "We shot the movie chronologically, so the first day was part of the story, so we could all together go through that story." And every time, spoiler alert, someone died, people die in this movie. There's a lot of death in this movie.
Still feels like an indie because of all of the practical effects that are involved. I'm also getting to learn so much from everyone. The VFX team, I'm getting to learn a lot from props, I'm getting to learn a lot from costumes, because they're all having to work in these new spaces where they're being heavily relied upon for these huge scenes.
One thing was clear from the very start. Alvarez wanted to lean on how they originally made the films and use as little CGI as possible. Archie Renault, who plays Tyler in the film, mentioned this in an interview. Everything was very, very practical, and that was nice. When I first spoke to Fede about this project, he explained that everything was going to be built and the world was going to be very, very real. And that's just what you want as an actor. Alvarez in the same interview would say, "I have this obsession with no green screens, so we built every creature and set. Everything had to be built so we were really living and breathing in these spaces." This statement sparked controversy across the internet over the perception of him downplaying VFX artists that would likely have a large part to play in the film. This controversy sparked even further when Alvarez tweeted out this picture of the set saying, "We went to extreme lengths in Alien Romulus to avoid CG sets. This is Jackson's Star Colony on the first night of the shooting." Others would comment, including Hugo Guerra, who's an award-winning director, VFX supervisor, and former head of Nuke Compositing. And he would tweet out, "I'm so tired of this constant anti-CGI propaganda. Imagine if someone said, we went to extreme lengths in Alien Romulus to avoid practical sets because CGI is so much better. Newsflash, CGI is completely invisible these days, and I can guarantee that Alien Romulus will have hundreds of CGI shots and thousands of VFX shots. Just watch the end credits and get back to me." With all this being said, Alvarez isn't anti-CGI, however, and he does embrace computer-generated imagery, but there's a valid reason he may or may not have stepped into this proverbial minefield. Historically, Hollywood has often been a bit disingenuous when it relates to what parts of a film were shot for real or helped with CGI. Think of Christopher Nolan's descriptions of some of his films like Oppenheimer, not crediting VFX artists, or the Barbie behind-the-scenes videos where you can see that they keyed out blue screens to, for some reason, make everything look more practical. For many, no CGI turned into invisible CGI. It's a disingenuous marketing tactic at best. For Alien Romulus, though, these propaganda allegations seem a bit misplaced when going off the interview with Alvarez. And to kind of clear this up, some missed his final statement in this interview. But I'm not an anti-CG guy. I got the chance to do Evil Dead because I had made this short called Panic Attack with a couple of friends, and we did all the CG. So I come from a background where I know how to build the effects myself. I still do VFX shots in my movies to this day. I'll cut and do VFX shots on my computer sometimes. So it's just whatever is best for the shot. And when it comes to face-to-face encounters and moments with creatures, nothing beats the real thing. While the practical elements are so awesome in this new film, I do think the industry at large needs to do a better job of not throwing digital artists under the bus and using them as a scapegoat for why a film turned out bad. With Alvarez preferring practical effects, you may wonder what some of the more interesting work actually looks like. Aside from the purpose-built spaceship interiors, we can see quite a collection of interesting effects that we even get a glimpse of in the trailers. Facehuggers are animatronic puppets with servo-controlled fingers. The puppeteers hold two controllers which house 4 triggers, which when pressed down, clenches one of the facehugger's fingers, simulating a running effect when rapidly pressing the triggers in waves. The xenomorphs are puppets of their own, which are held up by stands and have articulable limbs and moving heads. And of course, the alien was worn with actors wearing full body suits to portray and act the xenomorph. It really is a cool feature that we have witnessed in almost every Alien film. There is always a suit for the alien or some sort of puppet. Whether or not that gets fully used in the film is, of course, another question entirely. but it's a feature that has made the Alien franchise stick out from most other franchises: the intricate designs of each of the suits throughout the entire series.
Our Xena was a slightly different design, but all based on the original Alien film. So to most people, it looked very similar. And then we're matching the amazing practicals that were built by Legacy. The team there did an amazing job, and we've been able to start with that where we need to do the augmentation, whether it's adding a tail to the animatronic or to the suit, or a full version of it, like I said, if he has to fly or move in zero-G. It's all based off those physical suits.
Now, like we mentioned before, even though they would be utilizing these suits for the film, they still would be working hand in hand with the VFX team to get all the details right.
Our creatures are very interactive. Of course, we will use the wonderful magic of CGI and Eric and his team, absolutely. Doing effects that some people would just pass off to being CGI has been really great, because if you're given the opportunity, and that's for Team Gillis and Team Weta and everybody collectively, if you're given the opportunity to do it, you can pull off some really amazing effects.
Miniatures are again heavily used, even for exterior shots of the spaceships traveling through space, which were recorded by putting the miniature on a stand, spraying a bunch of fog and mist like the old movies, and filming it in front of a screen projection. And then there are the effects which you may not even expect to see in this movie, such as the working heat camera displays on handheld equipment. Of course, why fake it when you can just do it for real after all, right? Speaking of earlier Alien directors, Alvarez was lucky enough to show his take on Alien to two of the most influential directors of the Alien franchise, of course including the aforementioned Ridley Scott and also James Cameron, who directed the more action-focused Aliens. He valued those directors' input a lot, saying that if Ridley Scott hated his movie, then his input would be well worth it. Fearing disappointment, Fede instead got a great review from Scott, with him stating, "Fede, what can I say? It's f***ing great."
Watching anyone's version of something I've already done, because I already had to deal with that on Blade Runner. There's always trepidation, but I'd seen 3 of his films prior to that, so I thought Alien needed a really fresh view. And what I liked was the fact that he cast such young people. So that was a really valuable asset to what he was doing and what I knew he could do. So I was kind of excited.
Before filming Romulus, Alvarez actually got to know James Cameron a while ago, even being invited to the set of Avatar 2 and becoming pen pals with him, and Cameron's role in the creation of Romulus is a supportive one, with hours worth of discussions about Alien and his experience directing it, which likely included his war stories of control and power plays in the studio and tea breaks, of course, and watching through an early cut of the movie and giving his 2 cents about it. The film would be released to theaters on August 15th, 2024, to much positive early feedback. Regardless, Alien Romulus has entered its own chapter into this storied franchise that originated by Dan O'Bannon's idea for the story and H.R. Giger's incredible artwork, and it has continued through multiple iterations over the decades. And while some of these films vary in how people view them, one thing is clear: the Alien franchise still has many more stories to tell in its future. But as far as the stories for the entire franchise currently, this concludes our 7-part series on the production of the Alien franchise, and you can now watch all of them back to back right here. And I'd encourage you to do that right now. Share it with your friends, share it all over social media. We appreciate you guys hanging in with us for this 7-part series. Go watch Alien Romulus. Have fun.